If it gets really, really cold, it starts to get cold in here too, but the walls are 1.5 feet thick.
Take a step into the past, or perhaps catch a glimpse of the future, with David Brown, whose home is made of some of the best insulation around. Incredibly, bales of hay. The Hay House, as it's known, is part of David's 12-acre working organic farm along the Connecticut shoreline.
75 years old.
Is this propane?
It's propane, yeah.
There's no electricity, no furnace, no running water.
Want to grab it for me?
The chores seemingly never end for David Brown.
There.
Repairs must be made, chicken coops cleaned, animals fed, and of course wood. Lots of wood must be split. When not going against the grain of modern society, David earns a living through oil painting. On this day, in his studio, in his barn, which is insulated with hay.
Hopefully just actually living like this, and the art and all will speak for itself.
David's art is about his way of living and the natural world around him.
How did you get to this life? How did you get here?
Partly I got here by way of Nepal, because I had lived in Nepal in very remote villages and discovered that people living in one-room houses with no electricity or plumbing and smoky fires were the happiest people I'd ever met. The town I was living in was called the Village of Happiness. That had been its name for more than 1,000 years. And they were just happy people. I never saw anybody get angry. And we're talking about a year. I never saw anybody get angry.
What message did you get from that
The message I got was that happiness is not about big houses and cars. I don't know if I would say that happiness is about living simply, but living simply doesn't detract from happiness.
David doesn't shun all modern conveniences. His mobile phone also has email, but otherwise, he feels he has everything to meet his needs, including this leafy outdoor space to keep cool in summer called the Bamboo Room.
In the summer, if it's 95 out there, it's 75 in here.
David has been living this simple, back-to-basics lifestyle for more than 25 years.
I was a geography major, and that's what we would study, is how much people use and how Americans stack up against the third world, against Europe. And I knew by the time I moved in here that we would have to think about consciously growing smaller, and that getting smaller was not a bad thing. I just figured that I could show people what it could be like. A friend of mine says that the only way to teach is by example. And I find that there are a lot of environmentalists who talk the talk, but there are fewer of them who actually walk the talk.
Cynthia Rabinowitz is one who does.
It's very rugged land, as you'll see.
She is the co-founder of the Institute for Sustainable Living. Here, in the middle of winter, plants grow in unheated greenhouses warmed by mulch.
This is an experiment of sorts.
Yes, and I have to say that we're following a method that was developed by Elliot Coleman, who's kind of the guru of winter. Let me cover this over.
Sure.
He's the guru of winter harvesting. So this is not our own idea. I've got to give credit where it's due.
The Institute holds workshops for the ever-increasing number of people interested in reducing their carbon footprint and becoming more self-sufficient.
We're heading into an era where we're going to reap all the bad things that we've been doing and face the consequences. It's wake-up time. But I think that we have the tools and the knowledge to start reversing things.
One of those tools is called permaculture, an ecological design system for sustainable living that mimics natural ecosystems to create things like edible gardens in the forest.
In permaculture, we're trying to provide all of our human needs as close to home as possible. So our big human needs are food, fuel, fiber, shelter, water. These are the things we need to survive.
So this is all going to be edible forest garden here, and we just...
And each year here, growing numbers of people are learning the practical skills that nearly everyone had in times past.
It does sound like, though, we're getting back to where we were hundreds of years ago.
Well, I think we're going to have to. I really do. I think we're going into a post-oil era. And what is that going to mean?
Ken Gronbach studies these things. He's a futurist who pores over data to predict what's ahead. And along with the movement towards smaller, sustainable, and more self-sufficient, he sees another major factor why people will soon be living with less.
When you look at demographic changes within our society, what are you seeing that might indicate something might be going on?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that's going on relative to less is more is that you have a huge baby boomer generation that's currently 48 to 67 years old that doesn't have a lot of money. Equity in the home was the boomers' retirement. In 2007, collectively in the United States, we had about $14 trillion in equity in our homes. And now it's 7. So yeah, we're gonna have to make some changes here.
He's forecasting a mass movement of baby boomers to much smaller homes when the housing market recovers, and that their Gen Y children and grandchildren will push them to live a more environmentally friendly existence.
All of these things factor into we're going to live simpler, we're
Yes.
going to live smaller.
Yes, we're gonna live simpler, we're gonna live smaller, we're gonna live smarter, and I think we're gonna have more fun.
David Brown thinks so.
So this is bread, which actually includes some of our rye flour that we grew.
Living a life that some might call back to the future.
People are starting to get it. Somebody was telling me they were at a party recently and they overheard people talking about me in this place. And somebody said, "Oh, David Brown, I think he's the last person living in the 19th century." And the other person said, "Or the first person living in the 21st.
For my generation, I'm John Crane.